click on the person's photo and you see the questions and how the person answered it. By looking how the candidate answered, and this is actually question 6 in our whole series of 11 questions, you click on question 6 and vapers can have a very clear idea on how that certain candidate thinks about harm reduction and the EU beating cancer plan.
Hello, world. Welcome to the Vaping Unplugged Podcast. Everything you need to know about vaping and tobacco harm reduction.
Well, hello, vapers. Welcome to the Vaping Unplugged Podcast, where we cover everything you need to know about vaping. I'm Mariam, and I'm a campaign manager for WVA, and I will be the host for today's episode. I'm thrilled to welcome a special guest, Zoltan Kesz, the Government Affairs Manager of the Consumer Choice Center. And in this episode, we're talking about an exciting project called Consumer Champs. It is truly amazing because it empowers consumers and voters in a very innovative and creative way, in my opinion. And it intends to help consumers to make informed decisions in the upcoming 2024 European Parliament elections. Zoltan, it's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mariam, for having me.
Before we get into the Consumer Champs campaign, could you share a bit about your personal journey into consumer advocacy? Because I understand you made a significant entry into political arena in 2015, winning by-elections as an independent candidate, and that is truly fascinating. I really want to know what motivated you to enter politics and how your experience as an independent candidate in parliament shaped your opinions on consumer rights and consumer choice.
All right. Well, I'm from Hungary and originally I'm a teacher, but around 2010, I started to become interested in politics, actually in free market politics, free market education and stuff like that. And at the time, I founded a foundation called the Hungarian Free Market Foundation. And we did a lot of projects related to free market economics and consumer choice as well. So that was the beginning. Related to the main part of your question, my motivation for parliament. Well, at the time, and even today, the ruling party had a 2/3 majority. And in my constituency, there was a vacancy. Just for one seat, there was a by-election, and I was telling my friends, hey, this is our chance to break the supermajority of the government. And since the opposition parties had no one like a good candidate to run, most of them supported me and I ran. No one, and I have to emphasize, no one thought that I had a chance except for me and my team, and I won. What else? Yes, you asked about the experience that I had. In the Hungarian parliament, I would lie if I said that I have very positive experiences. Unfortunately, it's very difficult even today for opposition politicians to push through any bill or proposal. This was the same for me. And as far as consumer rights are concerned, I think I always kept to my beliefs and kept in mind when I was voting that unnecessary regulation doesn't serve customers and consumers.
That is very well said. Well, Zoltan, what can we as activists, as consumers, as advocates do to better influence political decisions? We talk about this a lot on this podcast, but I think you are the very best person to ask this question because you've seen the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of things activists can do and consumers can do. I think obviously the word activist itself tells you what you should be doing. You should be more active and more pushy towards politicians because in my opinion, and I will talk about that in connection with our Consumer Champs campaign as well, a lot of politicians just want to hide. If you push them, if you are constantly on their heels, that can help a lot. Now, let me say a couple of things about the difficulties of what activists can be facing, because most politicians, in my opinion, want to regulate, or I should say over-regulate stuff. I don't know why, but it seems to me that when someone becomes a politician, there's this misconception that, you know, they want to make some change, and they believe that it can be done through regulation. This is not true. And this is what activists should highlight, that over-regulation and regarding the citizen as a child will not work. That's one thing. The other difficulty, in my opinion, is let me just, like, the advocates of over-regulation. What do I mean by that? In my opinion, it's more dangerous than politicians, because the problem is that there are so many organizations and individuals who are just overfunded by people who have a lot of money and crazy ideas about regulating some things. So, like, instead of sponsoring innovative alternatives, they go for banning things completely. And this is something that activists should also be addressing, that hey, if you have a lot of money, then at least believe in innovation, believe in alternatives, and don't just think of banning things just because you have the power to do so.
So very well said. Like, as an activist myself, I've experienced many times how politicians just, they don't want to listen to you, and they want to do things their way. And it's heartbreaking, but sometimes there are moments when activists' voices are heard and it works. And that's the biggest hope.
That's why you constantly have to be there. So there is, you have to be there all the time.
Okay, let's zoom in to your current role in the campaign of the Consumer Choice Center, and let's begin with an overview of the Consumer Champs campaign. What is your role in it? What is it in general? And what is your main objectives for the 2024 European Parliament elections?
Okay, so starting with the 2024 European elections, for me, there are two completely different objectives related to the elections. With Consumer Choice Center, we started the Consumer Champs campaign, which aims at looking at a small segment of policymaking. We ask candidates, all of them if possible, to take our short questionnaire on topics like digital freedom, innovation, trade, harm reduction, and so on. And we think that our questionnaire is the perfect opportunity for these candidates to show their beliefs, principles, whether they agree or disagree. And then we also believe that voters can be better informed when voting for their future member of parliament. And there is a twist in this. Our campaign isn't just about reaching out to candidates for their opinions. So we're calling on voters to actively participate. So to encourage their parties, encourage their candidates to transparently outline their preferences. So when they answer, their score automatically appears on our website, and we reward them with badges if they are consumer friendly. So I mentioned our website, so check out the website at consumerchamps.eu for more details. And what else? We also make interviews with some of the select candidates. We want to show interested consumers which candidates care about their rights. And I have to emphasize that we are not planning to persuade anyone to vote for a certain party or candidate. We just want to outline that person's position in topics. And I also mentioned that there are two objectives that I have with this election. The other is quite personal. I think it is very important to let people know about the strengthening of massive online propaganda by Russia in Europe. And I think a lot of people should be aware of what's going on. And I see good signs of how politicians are waking up to this issue, but more should be done to counter this threat.
Definitely. It's so fascinating the way you're doing it. I don't know if anybody has ever done this before. As a voter, for me, it sounds so interesting to go on that website and check opinions of my candidates. But since we are in the Vaping Unplugged podcast, obviously I want to ask you this question. About the relevance of the campaign to vapers. Like, does the Consumer Champs campaign specifically address issues related to vaping and tobacco harm reduction?
Yeah, that's right. As I mentioned, we have questions, basically multiple choice questions, 11 of them. And when I mentioned that we ask candidates about harm reduction, we ask them the question, now let me quote because I want to be precise on that. To achieve the aims of the EU Beating Cancer Plan, EU member states should promote novel harm-reducing technologies such as vaping, heat-not-burn devices, and nicotine pouches. And then, candidates say whether they agree with it or not.
Okay, so that's one question that will highlight their opinions about harm reduction. This is wonderful. Uh, well, one of the many things that I really, really like about this campaign is the interactive website. Well, I want to hear it from you. How does it work, and how can vapers just go there and see their candidates' opinions about harm reduction only? Is there a way to make it work like that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you're a vapor and you're only interested in the question related to vaping, you can do that. So you access the website, vapors can do that, and you can filter by country, you can filter by party, by name, by badge, anything. Then what you do is you click on the person's photo and you see the questions and how the person answered it. By looking how the candidate answered, and this is actually question 6 in our whole series of 11 questions, you click on question 6 and vapors can have a very clear idea on how that certain candidate thinks about harm reduction and the EU beating cancer plan. So just click on the photo of the politician and you will see the answers.
Wow. And out of curiosity, if I may ask, are all these questions open-ended or multiple choice, or
they're all multiple choice. We had to do that. We're looking at having around 12 or 14,000 candidates. So for just out of the simplicity of this whole project, but still having a kind of concise methodology, we decided to do that. And I think it's working. Candidates like it. We've already had more than 130 people answering our questionnaire, although we are at the very beginning of the campaign.
I love the aspect of transparency there, where consumers and voters can just go on the website and see directly what their candidates answered to the different questions. That is truly fascinating. How can vaping community get involved in the Consumer Champs campaign to ensure their voices are heard? Like, is there anything specific we can do to help the process?
Yeah, well, definitely, because in my opinion, as I mentioned, one of the things is the participation of the voter. And if the vaping community regards itself as the voter, and it is, I think it's very important for them to urge the candidates of your country or your party to answer the questionnaire, because they received an email. And I think the whole Consumer Champs campaign is very good if you want to know which politician is a control freak and wants to overregulate your life, and who are the ones who regard you as an adult and just want to live and let live and just treat you like an adult.
Wonderful. And I'm really curious to know, like, has there been any significant insights that you got from running the campaign? Like, for instance, are there any specific countries where politicians have been more responsive or more engaged in the questionnaire?
Yeah, I mean, even for me as a former politician, this whole process is very, very interesting and has been very interesting. Different countries with different political culture and political transparency and willingness to communicate are really interesting to see. First of all, just a couple of examples. When you look at the websites of parties, because I'm doing a lot of research on the parties, you find a huge variety. Some of them with basically no real information. And the other extreme is when you have the party with like all the emails and social media handlers of the candidates. So the two extremes. Also, as far as responses go, up to now, we've seen mostly Scandinavian and Baltic countries, some German as well, who are very responsive. And that's, I think, a very interesting sign. South Europe is not very responsive for some reason. And when I'm looking for information regarding the candidates, and it's a very interesting thing, sometimes it's really difficult to find relevant information. If I may, let me just share a funny story with you. I had the information about a certain party that they would announce their candidates at a certain date. So I went on their website to find out about the announcement. There was nothing. No names, no press release. Then I checked out the newspapers from that country. Nothing. Again, no result. So I went on to see how they communicate on social media. And there was a post saying that they have chosen their candidates. And here is a photo. And there it was, a photo of 8 people. No names, nothing.
Wow.
So it's it's really interesting to see. And also sometimes we have politicians asking us where we got their emails from, and they are surprised that their parties post them. I mean, do you want to become a politician and hide from the public at the same time? I mean, it doesn't work that way. So I'm encountering some really interesting stuff every day, and I really enjoy that.
Well, as a former politician, what would be your motivation to participate in such a thing?
I mean, we are living in the 21st century, and I think the 21st century doesn't mean that regulation are the three key elements of politics. I think now we have to be grown up enough to understand that people are grown up, and you have to treat them as adults, not like children. And for me, even when I was in parliament, I had to struggle with fellow politicians, explaining to them that it's much better for a country, not necessarily good for politicians and political parties themselves, but for a country's development and improvement, innovation, and also regarding citizens as adult human beings is the best thing in the long run.
I agree with everything you said. Like, in the light of growing tendencies of nanny politicians, I think what you said is exactly how every noble politician should be. And this brings us to my last question. What would be your call to action for our listeners who are passionate about vaping and harm reduction and want to support Consumer Champs campaign and the cause?
Yeah, well, go on to our website on consumerchamps.eu. Check out whether your country's candidates have answered our questions. If not, shoot them emails, ask them to answer the questions, encourage your friends, your family members, anybody who's passionate about something that is, pro-consumer choice, like vaping, digital technology, AI, and so on and so forth.
It is wonderful. Sometimes as activists, we don't realize how easy it is to reach to our candidates. All it takes is to send them an email and tell them your opinion. It's very easy, and I hope they can find some contact information on the website and the easy ways to reach them.
Exactly, and also encourage the politicians, that they can be the consumer champs of the European Union elections. So it's a badge of honor.
It's a big title, yes. Thank you, Zoltan. It's really amazing what you're doing. I want to support you with everything I can. And thank you so much for your time. And I wish you all the success with this campaign.
Thank you, Mariam. It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure. This is it, dear vapors. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. And if you want to hear more about the Consumer Champs campaign, make sure to check out their website, consumerchoicecenter.org. And also, if you want more content like this, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you again for tuning in, and see you next time.